I never know where it's going to go.
I get to see my whole book.
There you go. Right back there. All right. Hi guys, come on in. Come on in. Let's get ready to roll. So I've got a very special guest with me. I think Chris, you've been on with me a couple times, right?
A couple of times in the past, yeah, and it's always been great.
All right, this is my mentor, Chris Adamo, who wrote the book back here. Okay, let me get it and show it to you guys. Wait. Okay, here we go. You gotta get this. Rules for Defeating Radicals. I use this as a desk reference for handling radicals, right, Chris? And we've got a lot of radicals. It seems
we're surrounded by them. Yeah, I mean that is the mainstream of the Democrat Party anymore, and sadly, we're finding out more and more that I put a chapter in there about rhinos, that they're right in there with the Democrats.
Enablers.
So they are absolutely enabled, absolutely deliberate. They just know that they can inflict more harm on our cause as conservatives from within, and so they claim to be Republicans.
Correct. Yeah, but they're anything but. In fact, I think you and I have talked about this often. The greatest threat to democracy are rhinos.
Yep, they're the biggest obstacle. I always use the analogy of the Trojan Horse, which, whether it's real or mythology, you look at the lesson there that the entire Greek army couldn't accomplish what a handful of guys were able to do when they got within the camp of the Trojans and were able to undermine it from within. And that's the principle we see with the rhinos, which is why the louder we hear from these people that they're good Republicans, and if we ignore their track records, the more we open ourselves up to attacks from within.
Well, you come from Wyoming, where one of the biggest rhino is Liz Cheney. I come from North Carolina, and we've got a guy who's right on her trail, and that would be Tom Tillis, who loves to restrict gun rights and everything the left is for, he's for. And it's absolutely maddening. Nothing makes people more angry than when they have given trust to someone and they not only erode the trust, but they kind of spit in their face, metaphorically speaking, right?
They do that, and then they claim to be the real Republicans. And again, as we've seen from Liz Cheney, where if you listen to her, and I could go on for hours, don't let me wander off down a rabbit trail here, but there's a whole organization in Wyoming called the Frontier Republicans, and they're a bunch of Liz Cheneys. And they're just out there to undermine conservatives.
Yeah, the Lincoln Project then.
Absolutely in the same league with the Lincoln Project.
Oh, perfect. We just need a lot more of those organizations. So we're going to talk about, because parents, grandparents, folks on the ground, they have tuned in tonight. They want to know, and they really want to know how to fight back against this lunacy. So we're going to have 5, I don't know if we call it rules, right? But principles about what's going on. So let me outlay this story for you, Chris, that we reported yesterday. Okay. Pitt County happens to be in the eastern part of North Carolina. It's by the coast. You would know East Carolina, Greenville, places like that. Well, Pitt County principal wants to ask elementary kids about their sexuality. So you might think, wow, so that's hyperbole. Wants to ask, well, whatever do you mean? Well, this is her. Actually, you can see right here. I want to see if I can zoom in on this. This is the principal, or the principal, the vice principal, and the guidance counselor. And the principal, Chris, is so enthusiastic about this training. She wants the world to know how wonderful this is, because get this, they're going to ask children about their status: gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, non-binary, and something I don't even know, two-spirit.
What's that last one?
Two-spirit.
Oh boy.
But check this out. Here's the purpose of the training, according to the website of East Carolina. That's who puts this training on. Get this: Safe Zone Training K through 12 is an opportunity for those in the education fields to talk, learn, ask questions about sexuality and gender, so they can take it back into the classroom, ask questions about, etc. So in other words, they're learning how to be able to take questioning and opening up questioning into the classroom of elementary school kids. So we're taking the radicalism, Chris, from the universities, which we know is positively out of control, and we are piping that in, not to the high schools, not to the middle school, to the elementary school.
Hey, let's put things back in perspective now. Not too long ago, if some adult was to go up to a kid on the street and start talking to him about these things, and the kid mentioned this to their parents that it had happened, that person we first of all hauled off to jail as a predator. And secondly, they'd be rightfully forced to register as a sex offender from that point going forward. Okay, these people are doing the very same thing. And the fact that they have credentials that say they can do this in the classroom, the fact it's being done under taxpayer dollars, those are not legitimizing factors. Those are greater outrages against the people, the parents, whose kids are being subjected to molestation, nothing short of molestation, whether it's verbal, obviously leading to physical. The goal is to corrupt those children with this stuff. And it's truly evil. It's an attack on these children. And the biggest thing that our side does wrong is to not characterize it as such. We disagree with it. We don't think it's appropriate in the classroom. I'd rather they were learning math and English. Those are secondary subjects. Those play down the real evil of what's going on here, the real evil that needs to be dealt with as such.
So we have ding, ding, rule or principle number 1. Okay. You can see it printed up here, guys. The rule number 1 is what? Don't minimize this, right? Don't minimize what we're living in. The left is hostile to protecting the innocence of children. And as you pointed out, this is not the America that we know. It didn't used to be that way. And who's to blame? The left. And don't you ever let the left forget that.
Yeah, it has to go back to that. But I'll show you how they are able to escape culpability. Just a couple of things we saw there, and I jotted down real fast. First of all, if you look at that picture, there's a flag in the background that says love wins. Okay.
Let's look at that, guys. There you go.
Love wins. This isn't about child molesting. This is about loving these children. All of a sudden, these leftist counterculture monsters, and I'll call them monsters, there's nothing better than that. All of a sudden, they're on the moral high ground because they're talking about love. You know, even the word pedophile was a fairly recent term. They don't use the word child molester anymore. It's a pedophile. It's a child lover. Okay. And if you scroll down to the article, right there, that pull quote, safe zone training. Okay. This is safe zone. This is where these kids are safe. They're safe to be what? Safe to be molested, safe to be coerced and humiliated with this perverse discussion that, frankly, most kids are reflexively, they're just inherently modest. They don't really want to go into all this. They don't want to rip off their clothes in front of each other. And yet all of these perverts have gotten into official positions, and suddenly they're pushing this on these kids. And what are the parents doing? Parents are going on the defensive. The number one tactic of the Alinsky strategy is to claim a moral high ground, and therefore your opposition feels like they have to oppose it from a defensive position. Once you do that, it's not a matter of who's going to win. It's a matter of how long it's going to take them. That's why we've got to go back to calling these things out for exactly what they are in our terms, not theirs. And we've got to stand on those truths, and we cannot grant them any latitude for anything supposedly reasonable, because what's going on here? Perversion and child molesting. There is no reasonable ground there, and we should never, ever allow them to gain any kind of a toehold in the conversation by claiming as much.
Okay, so they're going to claim the moral high ground, and if you take it to its basic element is what the opposite of love is what we're going to be accused of, right? And is hate.
Yep, we hate because we don't want kids engaging in illicit activities, being coerced by adults that shouldn't be in the presence of children if they promote this stuff. So yeah, we're the ones that are full of hate. What happened to kids back when this so-called hate that we advocate. What happened when it predominated? You didn't have teen pregnancy. You didn't have kids, little boys thinking that they want to take toxic chemicals into their bodies to become little girls. You didn't have suicides on the scale that you have nowadays. You didn't have any of that stuff, but they've classified it as hate. And unless we come back very bluntly and realign people with what's really going on here, we're fighting a defensive war.
Right. So the way that we are advocating, and you can tell me what you think of this idea, is we're advocating this to our candidates, our campaign surrogates, everybody who is out there and who is trying to save children, asking questions. So ask the question, how come it is that girls can't have their own public bathroom or changing facility anymore? How come that is?
That's
explain.
That's a basic right, a basic decency that a society that cares about vulnerability in its young people, in its young women, we would do that out of consideration for them. They deserve that. We take care of them because those things are private that they go through, and those things are something that we should protect. And in the same sense as with the sports, where you have these 6'5" male athletes trouncing these women in women's sports, in the same sense, but much more personally, to allow males to go into those bathrooms is a total betrayal and abandonment of the sensitivities of those little girls and young ladies.
Right. And so in this instance, you could frame a question and ask the principal, and believe me, you hadn't seen the last of this story, guys. We are just beginning, let me assure you. Asking the principal, so let me ask you this. How is teaching about homosexuality and learning to cultivate questions about that, how is that your business as a principal?
Right.
And they'll say something like, well, it's not our business. Well, you see, it's love. It's love for those students who need to come out and to be gay openly. And then I would point, this is just kind of me going down the logical, road here. Oh, okay. So homosexuality and gay children, they need to talk about that in school. I get it. I get what you're saying. And so that means that the rest of the students, they can talk about things like math, science, reading, and history. So I understand what you're saying now. To love the gay student is to not teach them, but to talk to them about perversion.
Yep. Boy, am I glad you went there with it, because yeah, the whole thing was pushed on us initially. Excuse me. You can tell I'm mad. Was pushed on us initially under the guise of tolerance. And tolerance is treated as the ultimate virtue. And I can give you extreme historical examples of where tolerance of evil was not a good thing. Tolerance of evil allowed innocent people to be harmed in great numbers. And again, we can go through all of history with that, but it's presented as a virtue. And our side comes back with, well, we don't want to be intolerant because that's mean, that's evil. Well, you know what? If I have to do something to be intolerant of sickos coming into the classroom, pushing this stuff on kids and doing literal, irreparable physical harm to these kids, I'm going to be intolerant of that.
Yeah. But, being intolerant means, and here's how we kind of communicate that, is being able to take a central word in their argument and bring it back and say, gosh, I agree. Nobody likes intolerance. And that's why we're standing up for the right for girls to be able to have their own bathroom, because I think it's wrong to be intolerant of girls. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly. The tyranny of the minority there. And what you end up having in those situations, obviously, is for every poor little confused boy that doesn't really understand, because he's been fed such nonsense, he doesn't understand his sexuality as a male. For every one of those, you've got a dozen opportunists that are going, if I just stand here and look stupid, say stupid things, I can get in the girls' bathroom. And especially as some of the situations you pointed out in the past, I can get in there and get away with stuff that I couldn't get away with out in the open.
Well, we remember Klinger from MASH, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's the original opportunist when it comes to trans. The guy, he dressed in women's clothing in order to get a ticket back to the U.S. when he was fighting in the Vietnam War, and it was just so funny because it never actually